Hello and welcome. My name is Cal Harris, and this is my story. Tonight's podcast is episode 2 of season 1, titled The Investigation. Tonight, I will walk you through what really happened in the hours, days, and weeks after my wife Michele disappeared on the morning of September 12th, 2001. I'll give you an inside look at the New York State Police Troop C investigation and the extremes they went through to try to put me away, eventually altering the evidence when they realized they made a huge mistake in coming after me at the exclusion of all of the other suspects in my wife Michele's life. On the morning of September 12th, 2001, I wake up around 7 a.m. I take a shower and then go downstairs to the laundry room to get some clothes. Since Michele was sleeping on the couch in the living room, I walk over to see if she was up. She wasn't there, and her sheets and blankets were still folded on the table. Michele would have been sleeping on the right-hand side, on the other side of the couch at this point in time in our relationship, and her sheets and blankets would have been on the counter or the table next to the fireplace. Since she wasn't there on the couch, I then walk over to the kitchen door leading out to the garage. And in this photo, that would be the door on the left. Her minivan was not in the garage, and the overhead door was open. In this photo, Michele's van would normally be parked right where the boat is, on the left-hand side of the garage, closest to the door leading into the kitchen. Since I needed help getting the kids ready for school, I called our nanny, Barb Thayer, and asked if she would be available to come up and help me get the kids ready for school. I explained that Michele hadn't come home yet, and I had to take the 3 older kids in to school. I needed Barb to watch our youngest son, who was 2 at the time. She said she was available and would come over. A few minutes later, I called Michele's cell phone, thinking that if she was on her way home, I didn't want Barb Thayer to waste a trip coming over. And in this photograph, if you look, you'll see the house phone in the lower right-hand corner. It's black, and it's sitting in the middle of the photos of the kids. And I'm going in detail here because this becomes important later on. I didn't leave a message. I called Michele's cell phone and got her voicemail. I didn't leave a message because there's no cell phone service within a 10-mile radius of our house. Michele and I both knew, having lived there for 10 years, that if either one of us was expecting the other to be on the way home, there was no sense leaving a message if we were within this 10-mile radius. So I call her cell phone right after I call Barb Thayer. I use that black phone there on the desk, and I get a voicemail, and I don't leave a message. About 30 minutes later, Barb Thayer comes into the kitchen from the garage. And again, it's this door on the left. I'm standing at the counter just a few feet away from her. And I would have been standing on the left-hand side of the counter in this photograph. And I want you to notice the chair at the bottom of the photo. It's the same chair that you see here in the lower left-hand corner of this photo. Now, Barb Thayer comes through the door, and she's standing right there in the entranceway. And I'm standing here at the counter, and we're literally just a few feet apart looking at each other face to face. This becomes important later. Barb says Michelle's van is at the end of the driveway. It's unlocked, and I looked inside to see if Michele was hungover and sleeping. I said, if the van's unlocked, are the keys in it? Barb says, yes, they are. I said, well, we better go out and get it. We went out to the end of the driveway, and this is a picture of the end of our driveway. Our house is in behind the trees, and you can't see it from the road. And you can't see the end of the driveway from the house. So Michelle's van is parked on the right-hand side of this photograph. It's facing in. It's just outside of the fence and the gate, but it's off the main road, which runs across the bottom here. And her van was parked along the grass on our driveway. We went out to the end of the driveway in my truck. And on the way out, we were both just talking out loud. One of the things Barb said is, I wonder if she wandered off drunk and is in a ditch or in the field. Now, if you notice the field on the left of this photograph, it goes all the way back to the woods, you'll see that it is cut about the same height as the lawn. So if there was something out there, if there was a body out there, if Michele was out there, Barb and I clearly would have seen it driving out in my truck. One of the things I said is, I wonder if she went to New York to be with her friend Lisa. Since Michele and I were not communicating about our personal lives, I had heard from the kids the previous week that Michele was making plans to go visit her friend Lisa in New York. Not knowing any more than I did at this point, the thought just popped into my head to ask that question. Of course, none of this made any sense. Barb and I were simply trying to process why Michelle's van was at the end of the driveway and just talking off the top of our heads. However, there was much to do about this innocent conversation later. We reach the end of the driveway and Barb gets into Michelle's van. I'm sitting up high in my pickup truck, looking over the field and ditch running past the driveway. Not seeing anything unusual, I turn around and follow Barb back to the house. She parks the van in the garage where Michele would normally park. And again, this is where the boat is right now. Michelle's van would be parked right where the boat is. And again, it's right next to the door coming into the house. We get the kids ready, and I take the 3 older kids into school while Barb stays home to watch our youngest son, Tanner. Understand, at this point in time, Michele and I are not communicating. We're in the middle of a divorce. We're living in the same house. As I explained in episode 1, that came from a judge's order. I am not to know what Michele does when she leaves the house, so I have no idea what's going on in her personal life when she's not home. I know that the 2 closest people to Michele are Barb Thayer, who was older and like a mother, and Michelle's sister-in-law, Shannon Taylor. This morning when Barb shows up, I'm taking my cues from Barb Thayer. She knows Michele just as well as anybody. Barb Thayer is not panicking at this point in time. And she's making comments like, maybe Michelle's at her boyfriend's house, apartment, and is sleeping. Or maybe she's hungover and staying at a friend's house, etc. So Barb is not panicking. She's making these comments, which she clearly knows more about what's going on in Michelle's personal life than I do. So I'm not panicking either at this point in time in the morning of September 12th. I drive the kids into town and I drop them off at school. I could tell they were upset that mommy wasn't home to see them off. I then go to my office, which is about a mile away, and I'm sitting behind my desk when at approximately 9:20 a.m., two New York State Police Troop C investigators knock at my door. I'm sitting at my desk. Surprised, I invite them in to sit down. They ask me some standard questions about what was going on in Michele and my relationship over the past few months. What was life like in the house? What was the status of the divorce? And other basic questions like that. They're there for about 20 minutes. I then offer to take them out to our house and have a look around. I offer to them to take them out to our house. I didn't know it at the time, but Michele's friend Nikki Burdick called our house that morning, right after I left with the kids. She spoke to Barb Thayer and found out that Michele hadn't come home. She then calls Michele's divorce attorney, who in turn called the New York State Police. This is the official start of a 15-year investigation. We end up driving out to my house. I'm in my pickup truck, and the two New York State Police investigators are following me in their unmarked vehicle. We arrive at the house and walk into the left-hand side of the garage where Michele parks her van. And again, in this photo, it would be right where the boat is sitting now. We stop for a minute and look inside Michele's van and around the area in the garage. We are standing right on top of the area that later they claim I killed Michele. And that area is in this photograph, and it's on the garage floor right at the bottom of this photo, just a few feet from where Michele's van would normally be parked. We're standing and walking around her van, right on top of this area. Not seeing or smelling anything unusual, we then walk into the kitchen from the garage. And that is the door on the left here. We come into the entranceway and we're standing there and we're chatting. We are again standing right on top of an area where later they claim I attacked Michele when she supposedly came home at around 11:30 p.m. after leaving her boyfriend's apartment. At the time, there was a throw rug laying on the floor, right on the tile, right in the middle of this entranceway. It was a multicolored throw rug made of weaved cloth. It was absorbent, so it would attract stains. It was older, with many different stains on it. And again, we're standing on top of it, not seeing or smelling anything unusual. We walk through the rest of the house into each and every room. Now, the next room we walk into is right to the right on the photo. There's a door leading into the laundry room. There's three doors. The door on the left from the garage, the door straight ahead to the walk-in pantry, and then to the right is the door leading into the laundry room. They look in the laundry room. They don't see or smell anything out of the unusual, and we continue. I continue to give them a tour of the house. I then take them outside to look around the outside of the house and yard. Keep in mind, these are two senior New York State Police investigators, and neither one is alarmed in any way about what they see in the house. Finally, I take them back out to the end of our driveway and show them where Michele's van was parked when Barb Thayer arrived earlier that morning. We walk around the area, we walk around the blacktop, we walk into the yard, and we walk over to the field and look in the ditches running past the driveway. And again, we find nothing unusual. At this point, I say to both the investigators that I'm heading back into town and staying at my office in case I get a call from the school indicating that my kids are upset. I tell them both that they are welcome to stay as long as they want and search wherever they want to. They can stay out here at the end of the driveway. They can drive back into the house. They can go back in the house. They can do whatever they want. I'm going into town to be close to my kids. The next few days and weeks are a madhouse at our entire property. Dozens of New York State police personnel, dozens of New York State forest rangers, local volunteers, search and rescue dogs, and helicopters. They set up grid searches using kite string, walking side by side about 5 feet apart through the woods. And they used the kite string to drag behind them so that they would know that that area had been searched previously. And they did a grid search throughout the entire property, 200 and some odd acres. They then brought in state police divers to search the bottom of the lake. These are professional divers trained by the New York State Police. They then bring in cadaver dogs in boats that could smell a body underwater. Now, this is a view off the back porch of our house, and I just want to show that they searched the entire woods around the lake. The woods on the left, the woods on the right, all the way around the lake to the other side. Again, they were 5 feet apart. They were dragging kite string behind them. It was a thorough search. They also dove in the lake. Now, the lake is man-made. It's only about 10 to 12 feet deep throughout the entire lake. It has minimal structure, natural structure and debris at the bottom of the lake. And they would have been clearly easy to see whatever they wanted to in diving in the lake. There wasn't like it was deep. It wasn't like there was any reason that they couldn't find what they were looking for. A body, a weapon, you name it. It would have been very easy to find anything of that nature. Eventually, they bring in a C-130 military airplane with infrared technology that could detect heat from a freshly dug grave. So their theory was that I attacked Michele in the house, killed her in the garage, and then took her somewhere on the property and buried her in a shallow grave. And apparently, with this technology, when you dig a grave and then cover it back over with the fresh soil, that fresh soil is a different temperature than the ground around it. It's warmer. This technology was so precise that it would pick up porcupines and raccoons in the trees all around the property. Dozens of New York State Police personnel were also going through my house, tearing everything apart. Notably, they were entering through the garage into the kitchen, where again they claim I attacked Michele and killed her. They were completely compromising what they claim was a crime scene. They were out there for days, and in that time, it had rained one of those days. So they're coming in through that door from the garage. They're walking on top of the throw rug. They're walking on the tile, and they're walking through the house, and they're bringing in, moisture, dirt, mud, leaves, anything else, debris that you can imagine. They completely compromised what they claim was a crime scene. Also of note was this man, Steve Anderson, a New York State Police investigator, a, quote, forensic specialist. Steve Anderson inspects the interior of the house, looking for anything that may have fingerprints, hair, blood, or DNA on it. He zeroes in on the left-hand side of the garage where Michele parks her van, and also just inside the garage door coming into the house. As an expert forensic specialist, Steve Anderson's Forensic 101 training includes 1. Walking into a potential crime scene and observe. 2. Take notes of anything that he sees of interest. 3. Take photographs of anything suspicious. And 4. Test these areas with a cotton swab dipped in solution that will change color, noting any traces of blood. This is the sequence that he is supposed to use. This will become important later. After days and weeks of intense searching, using every means possible, they find nothing. No body, no witness, no weapon, no bloody clothes, no bloody towels or rags, no trace of any cleaning solutions. They spent a lot of time in the laundry room. They checked the sink trap in the laundry room. They checked the sink trap in the kitchen, all the sink traps in the bathrooms, the showers, the bathtub, you name it, they checked it. Also in the laundry room, we had a mop and a bucket. And they checked those. They didn't find anything on the mop, but they did find a stain inside the mop bucket that came back human blood, but it was an unidentified male. So we don't know who that was from. They check my truck. They find nothing. They check the ATVs. They check the boat in the garage. They don't find any shovel with dirt on it or fresh soil. They don't find any boots or shoes with dirt or fresh soil on them. They even tested my chainsaw. They did a DNA blood test on my chainsaw. Everything comes back negative. Steve Anderson finds about a dozen sub-millimeter stains on the garage floor right next to where Michele parks her van, and on the inside of the kitchen door coming in from the garage. There was also some stains on the throw rug on the kitchen floor that was sitting right in the middle of the entranceway. Some of these stains come back human blood. Some come back dog blood. We had an old Rottweiler at the time who would spend part of his day laying on the garage floor, right next to the wall and door coming into the house. Eventually, some of these stains come back with Michele's DNA. Some come back with a close match, meaning it could be one of the kids' DNA. And then again, there was DNA in the mop bucket from my unidentified male. Of course, Steve Anderson and the New York State Police immediately think they've got their man, and I'm the one. Why would Michele's DNA be on these stains? Well, first of all, we lived in that house for 10 years. The area from where Michele parks her van in the garage into the kitchen, this door on the left, is the highest traffic area in the house for the entire family, including the dogs. Second, the amount and size of these sub-millimeter stains doesn't even remotely represent a crime scene, especially in an area as small as the entranceway in this photograph here. Now, they have their expert witness testify, and that is Henry Lee from the famous O.J. Simpson case. They have Henry Lee testify as an expert witness, and then Steve Anderson testifies as the state police forensic expert. Now, what they're looking at is nothing more than the photographs that Steve Anderson took when he inspected the house. And these photographs were from a Polaroid camera. So in other words, it was a camera that you would shoot, take a photograph, and then the camera would immediately spit out the photo, and the picture would develop within a minute in front of you. These weren't digital cameras. They weren't sent out to a photograph store, CVS or whatever. You know, this was a old style Polaroid camera. So Henry Lee is testifying from looking at the photographs that Steve Anderson takes. And Henry Lee testifies that in his opinion, the number of stains that come back with Michelle's DNA between the garage floor, the inside door of the kitchen, and the throw rug, there are about a dozen sub-millimeter stains that come back with Michelle's DNA. Okay? Their theory is that Michele came home on the night of September 11th, 2001 at approximately 11:30 p.m. after leaving her boyfriend's apartment. Their theory is I was laying in wait and that I attacked her in the entranceway here, and that I supposedly bludgeoned her in the head with a blunt object, hitting her once and cracking her skull. It's bleeding. I hit her again and possibly a third time, which would create blood spatter. Now, at some point, take some time and Google a true crime scene that is a result of a bludgeoning where someone is hit in the head multiple times with a blunt object and there's blood spatter. And you will see that it's a horrific scene. There is blood everywhere, and it's spattered for many, many feet in yards. And it's to the left, it's to the right, it's on the floor, it's on the ceiling. They call it cast off. If you hit somebody again in the head that's bleeding, and you'll get blood on that instrument, when you bring it back to strike again on the way back, that blood will be cast off and it will go onto the ceiling. And there's no crime scene here. What you're seeing here is exactly what Steve Anderson saw when he walked in. Nothing's changed in my house. Not this entranceway, not anywhere, for years after Michele disappeared. I didn't change the wallpaper. I didn't change the tile or the grout. I didn't change the doors or the trim. I didn't paint the ceiling. I didn't change the light. This is exactly what he saw walking in. That is not a crime scene. If I did what they claimed in that small area, 3 feet wide maybe, when all the doors are closed, it would have been a bloodbath in there. And there's nothing. Third, there's no scientific way to age blood, period. No scientific way. Can't be done, not with chemicals, not with any other test available, not with computers, not with centrifugals, nothing. There's no way to age blood, period. This becomes an extremely important issue later. Now, just to give you an idea, I want to use this as an example. This is a sub-millimeter object. I couldn't find a sub-millimeter blood stain that would give you the scale that this does. But this is actually a camera, a real camera. I found it on the internet, and it's a sub-millimeter in size, and it's on this tip of this finger. So that gives you an idea of the size and the amount of stains that were in the garage, in the kitchen, and on the throw rug that come back with Michelle's DNA. That's the size. we actually did a demonstration in front of the jury, and we used Henry Lee to do this demonstration. And what we did is we took an eyedropper and we put in colored water from food coloring, red food coloring. And we put 12 drops into an eyedropper. And then we had a brand new test tube, like the ones you see here. And we had Henry Lee, right in front of the jury, put 12 drops of this red water into a test tube. And if you look at the test tube on the left, just coincidentally, it's the same color. If you look at the test tube on the left, you'll see that when Henry Lee put 12 drops into that test tube, those 12 drops barely filled the very bottom of the test tube, meaning where the test tube is still curved at the bottom. That's as high as those 12 drops of blood or colored water went. The diagram here, this test tube, would represent the amount of red fluid that's in this test tube in the picture. The test tube that we used would have been a fraction of that. The blood would have been a fraction of what you see in this photograph here. That's it. That's the total amount of blood, DNA that comes back with stains that comes back with Michelle's DNA. That's it. It's not a crime scene. It's not even close. It's ridiculous. Now, I want to take a moment to address a question that I get asked a lot. And that is, what did you do to the New York State Police Troop C to make them want to go after you so bad at the exclusion of all the other suspects in Michelle's life? The answer is simple. This woman right here. This is Sue Andrews Mulvey of New York State Police Troop C. She's an investigator. This was personal for Sue Andrews Mulvey. Why? Because her father, John Andrews, worked for me in the mid-1980s as a salesman in one of our dealerships, and I fired him. Prior to working for me, John Andrews was the Broome County Sheriff in our area. Prior to that, he was in law enforcement for many years, and then he retired and then ran for the Broome County Sheriff's Office and won. Due to some controversy, John Andrews either lost his reelection or had to step down. Either way, he was out of a job, and my father asked if I would hire him since he knew John Andrews from way back. Out of respect for my father, I hired John Andrews, and it was a huge mistake. John Andrews was a bad man. He lied to customers, made promises he couldn't keep, caused problems on the sales floor with the other employees. It was just a bad situation. After almost a year, I wound up having to fire him. I gave him every opportunity I could. I waited almost a year, and I finally had to fire him. Sue Andrews at the time was a highway patrol person for Troop C. She was in a uniform, driving a marked car, and her job was to travel the highways and stop speeders, I guess. Since both John Andrews and his daughter Sue had huge egos, my firing John Andrews did not go over well with either of them. Apparently, Sue Mulvey held a huge grudge for a lot of years because as soon as Michelle's disappearance became known, Sue Mulvey put herself on as the lead investigator on my case with a clear conflict of interest. I have more on John Andrews later. As the days and weeks and months go by, Sue Mulvey is realizing she's made a huge mistake. At every turn, she's coming up empty-handed, and things are not looking good for her. Her obsession to get even with me for firing her father drives her deeper and deeper into the abyss, spending millions of tax dollars, throwing away good money after bad. And now things start to get nasty. In desperation, Sue Mulvey switches her tactics, trying to get under my skin the only way she knows how. And that is by going after my kids. And where does she start? Right at their school, St. Patrick's School in Owego, New York. At the time, my kids were 7, 6, and 4. She sends in this man, Mike Young, New York State Police Troop C investigator. Having had intimate contact with New York State Police Troop C over a 15-year period, I got to know who's who within the ranks at Troop C. Mike Young was low man on the totem pole. He was probably the dumbest of all Troop C personnel. This was supported by the assignments he was given in my case. In this instant, his job was to harass my kids at their school during school hours. St. Patrick's was a small school, maybe 100 students in grades pre-K through 5th grade. Everybody knew everybody. So when Mike Young started walking down the hallways, sticking his head into classrooms while they were in session, it had the effect that Troop C was looking for, specifically Sue Mulvey. Coincidentally, Mike Young also had children attending St. Patrick's School who were in the same classes as my kids. As if this wasn't bad enough, Mike Young's wife, Virginia Young, would run her mouth to all the mothers at the school, supposedly giving them inside information on the investigation that she was getting from her husband, Mike. She did this until it reached the point where my kids were not allowed to spend time with their friends at their house, birthday parties, and special occasions. As if my kids weren't going through enough at this point. This is the low-life tactics of Sue Mulvey, New York State Police Troop C. In fact, this is not the first time Sue Mulvey has stooped so low. Years earlier, in another case, Sue Mulvey coerced a false confession out of a 15-year-old boy that sent him to prison for a crime he didn't commit. Years later, the boy was released when the real criminal confessed to the crime. Sue Mulvey was named in the civil suit against New York State Police Troop C. The boy and his family were awarded a measly $150,000. Nothing is beneath Sue Mulvey. The harassment of me and my kids did not end here. Sue Mulvey, over the next 15 years, went to every extreme to try to get under my skin. And I don't know what she was trying to accomplish. I don't know whether she thought I was going to break down and confess, or I really don't know. I don't understand. But she was obsessed with trying to get under my skin. And it didn't work. But listen to what she did. Listen to the extremes she went to. 6 months after Michele disappeared, I took the kids down to Disney in March of 2002. They just needed to get away after everything they had been through, and it was spring break for them. And so we took a week and we went down to Disney just to get away and just so they could be kids. And again, they're young at the time, 7, 6, 4, and 2. It was just something that we needed to do. And we had a great time. However, on our return trip home, we get off the plane and we come into the airport. And as soon as we come into the airport, Sue Mulvey is standing there with another Troop C investigator. And she's just staring at us within a few feet. As soon as we get off the plane and come into the terminal. And she's got this smirk on her face that she always had. And I'll never forget this smirk on her face as long as I live. And they're just standing there and they're staring at us and they're smirking. And we're standing there like, what's going on here? For a minute, I thought that she came to arrest me in front of my kids and haul me out of there. But nope, she was just there to harass me. In fact, she drove an hour and a half one way just to harass me and my kids at the airport. She followed us through the airport, down to the baggage claim area, stood within a few feet of us as we were waiting for our bags, and just standing there staring and smirking at us. It was really pathetic. It didn't stop there. Later, she would take the New York State Police helicopter and she would fly it over my house on Sundays when she knew my kids were at home as a family. And she would have the pilot fly the helicopter right at the top of my roof of my house. I could actually go on the back deck and I could look up into the cockpit of the helicopter and I could see the smirk on the pilot's face. And I could also see the smirk on Sue Mulvey's face. Now, I don't know if any of you been around a helicopter that close, but it's loud and it creates a lot of vibration and a lot of wind. Our whole house was shaking and rattling. And she did this numerous times over the next few months. And she did it on Sundays. Now, I know it costs a lot of money to fly a helicopter. I don't know how much. But again, she was so obsessed with me that it didn't matter to her. She wasted millions and millions of tax dollars trying to get to me and get under my skin. That wasn't enough either. She would then park across the street from my business. Now, she was an investigator. She was in plain clothes and she drove an unmarked car. But she would park across the street of my business and she would bring 2 other patrol cars with her that were marked, the blue and the yellow New York State Police colors with the sirens on top, just so that everybody knew who they were as they were standing across the street from my business, trying to harass me, intimidate my employees, and intimidate my customers. They would stand there for the whole day. There'd be 6 of them that would stand there for the whole day, just staring across the street. Now, every time I hear that the state police is shorthanded and they need to hire more people, and well, apparently they don't, because I don't know how they could take 6 people off a rotation in the middle of the day just to stand across the street from my office and harass us. Millions of dollars wasted. Finally, Sue Mulvey tries to set me up. And she does this several months later, in November, in fact. And what she does is she leaks out through the grapevine that they're going to do another massive search at my property. And she's doing this on purpose because she thinks, again, trying to get under my skin, that I'm going to panic and I'm going to try to go back to where I buried Michele in this shallow grave, and she's going to try to and catch me. So what she does is she picks a specific week and says that over this 2-day period, she's going to do this search. And what she's trying to do is narrow down a time frame where she can watch me. And so what she does is she takes about a dozen New York State police personnel and she has them come out to my house at night. Now, this is November, so it gets dark pretty quick. But she has about a dozen state police personnel come out in camouflage, and night vision goggles. And they're laying in the woods surrounding my house, waiting for me to come out and supposedly take them to where I buried Michele. This went on for days. This is the extreme that she went to. And every single time she came up empty-handed. She just couldn't help herself. In closing, I want to say that overall, aside from Mike and Virginia Young, and I have more on these two later, everyone at St. Patrick's School was very good to my kids. The church, the administration, teachers, parents, and students, they were all really good to my kids. And in fact, I had people tell me early on that you need to move. You need to get out of town. You know, the publicity is crazy. The state police are all over you. You know, you need to get out of town. And we chose not to, and it was the best decision we ever made. We were literally in the eye of the storm. And St. Patrick's School was a sanctuary where my kids could go and be safe and protected. And they all did a really good job there. And I am forever grateful. Even after my kids graduated from St. Pat's and went on to graduate from Owego Free Academy High School, everyone along the way was simply a blessing for my kids. And every chance I get, I tell people that part of the reason my kids are doing as well as they are under the circumstances is because of the love and support they received at both schools from everybody. It really does take a village. And I will be forever grateful to all of those people who were involved at helping my kids and I through a most difficult time. This is the end of episode 2. Next Tuesday at 7 p.m., episode 3, the prosecution. I'll walk you through what they did with the evidence that they got during this investigation and what they did with that evidence when it came time to go to a grand jury and then eventually in front of a real jury. And I have actual video that's never been seen before of Sue Mulvey and Tioga County DA Gerald Keene admitting on video that they tampered with the evidence in their case. They tampered with the key evidence in their case. And I'm going to show that video. I'm going to walk you through it. It was at Henry Lee's office in Connecticut. They were sitting around a big table, and they're all having this discussion with Henry Lee. And Henry Lee is coaching them and how to lie to the jury with this key evidence. So at this point, if there's any questions, I'll take them. So far, I don't see any, and I don't know if we're having technical problems here with this. I've had some test runs that I've done several times, and it seems to be working for me, but I don't know. I don't know if it's working for people on the outside. So I will wait a minute to see if there's any questions, if anybody wants to type in a question or a comment. And then if not, then we will end this podcast for the evening. So we'll just wait a minute and give it a minute and see if anything comes up. Okay, I did get a comment from someone that it's working fine. So we'll just wait a few minutes more and see if anybody has a question. All right, got one comment that the podcast is too short. It needs to be longer. I can certainly make that happen. I'm trying to give you as much information as I can, and I could go on for hours with all the information and evidence this case has to offer. It was over 15 years. There's over 100,000 documents and evidence and displays. So I could, really just on the investigation alone, I could go on for hours about that. But I'm trying to keep everybody's interest. I'm going over what I feel is the most important aspects of the investigation. This next podcast, the prosecution, is where you're going to see how Sue Mulvey is in trouble and Jerry Keene is in trouble, and they didn't find what they were looking for, and now all of a sudden everything that I showed you tonight with the key witnesses, specifically Barb Thayer, I'm going to show you in this next podcast how all of a sudden everything that actually happened changes. And the key witnesses like Barb Thayer, her testimony changes from what she told the state police in the days and weeks after Michelle's disappearance. And she was probably the most interviewed witness of all because she was in the house. And Barb Thayer winds up being a snitch for the New York State Police. She was actually working for them. She was taking personal items of mine out of the house and giving them to the state police without telling me. Barb Thayer is really a real bad person. She tried to come across on the witness stand as this little old lady, innocent, and she is anything but. And I'll get into more detail about Barb Thayer next week and who and what she's really about. And boy, did she really, the state police, Sue Mulvey really got into her head because Barb Thayer was just really, really despicable in her behavior on the witness stand. So, all right. So that's about it, I guess. I know that there's people watching, people are reluctant to ask a question. That's fine. I'm learning as I go here. I'll get better with time, and hopefully we'll get some more interaction. But if you missed this podcast live, you can view it later. It'll be recorded, and just click on the link I gave you, and you can view episode 1 from last week and this one. But really, thanks for your time. I appreciate everybody that came out and watched tonight, and we will see you next week, next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Good night, and thank you.